Welcome to the Mortgage Podcast, where we give tactics, strategies, and inspiration to get you to 10 plus loans per month. We talk a lot about how to make a ton of money in mortgage while also being happy and thriving in your personal life. If you want to be a mortgage millionaire, you're in the right place. Welcome back, everyone. It's Todd Screama to the Mortgage Podcast. Today, we're talking about investing. There's a couple topics that kind of fire me up. One is sales. So that's a lot of this podcast is sales driven to get loan officers to 10 loans a month so that they have money to invest. The second one is investing overall. I love it. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I study it. I read books on it. I have coaches about it. I just love it. I think you just get interested in things. I always thought it was interesting. Why do some people not make a lot of money? Why wouldn't you do something that, you can earn a decent living? Secondly, why do some big earners just earn a lot, but then they spend it all? And then how are some people like these almost look like geniuses that become really good earners and then learn to invest? And I just think it's interesting. I was talking to my son last night. He's home from college. He's getting ready to graduate. We go to dinner and I planted something in his brain, and I'll just tell you what it is because it's not secretive. He said he's graduating in 45 days. So he's like, Dad, what should I do? I said, son, he said, well, maybe I should be a school teacher. I love kids. I said, hey, that's great. It's a very good career and you could do really well with that and have a lot of fun. I said, I've got a buddy that owns 5 care homes for mentally disabled, and he makes $1 million a year doing that. I said, so you could work as a teacher and make 80 grand a year and get summers off, or maybe, with my help and my backing, you could learn to make a lot more money and work the same amount of hours or less. And he's like, you see his wheels turn. And he's like, Dad, that kind of makes sense now. I had planted this seed like a month ago, right? When we were talking about careers. And he says, that actually makes sense. He says, let's talk more about it. So then I used that opportunity to close him. I said, hey, let's go talk to this person on Friday. I'll set it up. And the guy that owns 5 of them, and let's just see, let's learn from him. So we're doing that. So my point to my son is the same as my point to you. If you can learn to maximize something, the only reason we wouldn't do that is because we're scared or we don't know how to do it. And usually those two things go hand in hand. So let's just break those down. Let's take out the mystery and let's just talk about these things. I also want to be careful. I am not a licensed financial advisor. I give people general knowledge about either what I've learned or what I see works or what I do that works and mistakes that I've made so that you can learn faster. Okay, so let's go through this. The first type of investment is stocks, right? And Warren Buffett said, hey, back in the 80s, he wrote one of his famous end of year letters. And he says, hey, the average American just needs to invest in like a S&P 500 index fund and do one that has the cheapest fees. So the one that I use is through Vanguard. They charge me 4 basis points a year to manage an S&P 500 mutual fund for me. 4 basis points a year, just to put that in dollars, is for every $1 million I have invested, it's $400 a year management fee total. So, the postage on the statements they send me got to be, $40 of that. So it's very cheap. That's the cheapest you can ever find. But that was Warren Buffett's advice. And I believe in that because when you look at the S&P, you're going to see over the course of years, and you could verify this. The guy who owns Vanguard wrote a great investment book called The Little Red Book of Investing, has all these charts in it. You can ask ChatGPT, what's the average S&P 500 index fund return over the last 30 years? It'll tell you, but it's over 10%. And so if you think about that, if a 10% investment is going to double your money every 7 years. If you get a 15% rate of return on an investment, you're going to double your money every 4.8 years. So now, of course, the other way to do stocks is individual stocks. And the way I do that, and the most, again, Warren Buffett's advice on individual stocks is if you're going to do that, don't try and buy 100 of them. Maybe find 10 companies that you really trust and admire and you can study and get to know and invest in those 10 that you think are going to be around a long time and that have what he calls a moat around their business, meaning that they do something very special. Like an example, Amazon, their delivery system and their factory system, their products that they deliver in 4 hours or one day, it's going to be hard to trump that.
that like their infrastructure, their delivery infrastructure is so big and so massive, it would be really hard for someone to come in and try and like knock them off the block, if you will. Okay. So that's an example. NVIDIA for sure has the market cornered on AI chips. So Google search, like Google is into a lot of things, but probably no one coming around for the next 5 years and knocking them off the block. So you're looking for a moat, and you're looking for a well-run company. You're looking for a company that maybe even you like the products and you think that, hey, that this is something I'm going to bet on. What the studies show is that you're pretty much, even if you're decent at picking individual stocks, you're probably going to make around 10%. Okay. So if you don't want the stress, just invest in the S&P fund, and you're going to get about 10% historically. And that's a great rate of return. So I use this one a lot. Okay. I use both of those. The second one is active investing. So this is running a business, owning rental properties, owning a commercial building, starting an AI company, like anything where you are actively using your capital to make more money. Owning a restaurant, that's active investing. Okay. So some people say, well, I own a small company so I can do write-offs. Don't do that. There are tax advantages both with setting up retirement accounts and writing some things off of owning a business, but you wouldn't want to lose money so you could have a write-off, right? That's a dumb way of thinking about it. But if you can start a company and you can do really well doing it, whether it's big or small, that's active investing. Again, I've done this a lot. I like it when there's a really good idea that really helps people and you can run it, right? So some people don't want that responsibility. That's okay. I'm not saying you have to do any of these 7. I mean, you got to do something, but I'm just giving you an overview of how to think about these things. So active investing, such as running a business, would be number 2. Number 3 is real estate investing. So that's rental homes, that's commercial buildings, mixed use buildings, fix and flips, developing land, things like that. So I have had individual rentals. I don't right now. I have a commercial building. I own a strip mall that I developed. I am doing a couple subdivisions joint venture with a home builder. So I own the land. We developed it to a certain point, and now they're building the homes on it. So I've done development. I haven't done many fix and flips. I did 2 over the years. It's not really something I personally want to do, but I've done some of these and continue to do some of these. I like real estate a lot. I believe I'm right on this. I think that real estate has made more people wealthy than anything else. And you don't have to do this in a big way. You know, one of the smartest strategies I ever heard is to buy a house when you're young and buy a house every 2 or 3 years and keep that house. So you buy a house when you're 27. When you're 30, you buy another house, you keep that one as a rental. When you're 33, you buy another house, keep that one as a rental. And maybe you do that 3 or 4 times. If that's all you did and you fully funded your 401k, you're going to be a multi-millionaire. So I don't think these things need to be as overwhelming as people think they do. I remember my first house I ever bought, I bought for $125,000. I sold it for $385,000, and I used that money to buy a commercial building. So, I mean, it's a way to give you leveraged wealth that I just think a lot of people are scared of, and I don't think you need to be scared of it. It's not that hard to rent out a single family house and find a good renter. And there's companies that will do it for you if you don't want to do it. So I think that's probably the biggest way that people could take advantage of being a real estate investor. Number 4 is private equity. So this is oftentimes more passive investing for people. Private equity as a segment has had the highest rate of returns for investors of any segment of the 7 I'm talking about. It's also risky. So I have done quite a few private equity deals. Private equity is basically where a team comes together. They're like, hey, we've got this great idea. We're going to do this. For example, BlackRock, or maybe it was Blackstone. I get the two confused sometimes. They got a fund together and they said, hey, when real estate values were very depressed, they said, we're going to raise, I forgot how much money it was. It was a lot. And we're going to go buy single family homes across the country. And we're going to keep them for 7 or 8 years and then sell them. That was a private equity fund. Okay. There's all kinds of examples like this. So people come together and they raise money and they say, look, this money is for this purpose. We're going to take all this money. we're going to charge you, usually it's a 2% management fee a year. When we win, like when we do all this and make a lot of money, the founders, the PE firm, gets 20% of the profits. All the investors get 80% of the profits. That's a very typical PE structure. Okay. You're like, well, why would I pay 1 or 2% a year fee and they get 20% of the profits? Because of their expertise in a certain area and because they've raised the millions or billions to do it. So, and typically, like I have a buddy that has, just to give you a couple examples, he started a private equity where they buy apartment buildings and it's done very well. I've got a buddy that owns a private equity firm that buys sports teams, parts of sports teams, done very well. I have involved in a deal right now where we're raising money to build a fund to buy care homes in California. And we're going to buy 10 or 20 of them, let them appreciate, and then sell them in 10 years to someone and make a lot of money. So those are examples of private equity type situations. I would say this is more sophisticated investor because it's higher risk, but they can be great. Another one, fifth one is fixed income. So this is like annuities or bonds. You could buy government bonds. They may only pay 5 or 6% as an example, but they might be tax-free. Well, if you're in a 30, 40% tax bracket, your rate of return is actually 8 or 9%. So that's when bonds make sense. Bonds also are backed by the government if they're federal or state fund bonds. There are bonds that are private bonds. So I know that there's a nonprofit right now selling bonds for a private equity group. And so it's not backed by the government, but they are state and federal tax-free because it's for a nonprofit. And the real rate of return on those bonds is almost 10%. So it's a little riskier bond, but it's got a much higher rate of return. You can also buy annuities where, hey, I'm going to give you this much money. You're going to give me a check for $3,000 a month forever. So I don't really like annuities myself, but some people could talk you into them. I personally don't. That's something you could do on your own. So I don't like annuities myself, but some people do them. So fixed income assets, income, annuities, bonds, stuff like that. The sixth one is alternative investing. So this would be things like crypto, investing in precious metals, investing in art or cars, classic cars. All that stuff is kind of alternative investing. So I think of alternative investing as everything that doesn't fall into the other categories. I personally don't do those things, but I do know an individual that made a lot of money doing crypto. He got in early when Bitcoin first came out and made himself about $16 million. I've got a buddy that owns 40-something classic cars, and he says he makes money on them. I don't know for sure, but so I don't do number 6, but that's a little too exotic for me. I don't see myself buying a bunch of art, and hoping that I can resell it for a bunch of money. Crypto, I understand it. I'm not in it. I don't understand it enough to risk my money to do that. Okay. The last one is any combination of the above. So let me give you an example. You can buy into a sports team with a private equity firm. So that's private equity and it's owning part of a business. Okay. Join in a group where investors buy apartment buildings. So maybe it's an investment fund and it buys apartment buildings. So it's actively running businesses and it's a part of an equity fund. So that's doing two things at once. Join in a small group of investors to develop a strip mall. That's something that I did. Me and 2 guys developed this strip mall on 16 acres and then a grocery store and McDonald's and a gas station. We did really well on it. They needed some money. They had the expertise over 40 years. It made sense to me and we all did super well. So that's an example. We're doing development and it's a business. JV with a builder to build subdivisions. So I own the land and then I don't have the expertise of building houses. So I say, hey, builder, can you build on this land and we'll split the profits? Kind of what we did. And I did that twice. So that is land development combined with a JV with a home builder. So there's all kinds of combinations we could do here. Those are the 7 areas that I see for investing. So let me go over them again. You got stocks. You got active investing, like running a business. You got real estate investing, which is owning assets, private equity, fixed income, alternative investing, and any combination of the above. So when you think about all these things, my goal is to do a basic overview so that you could start to plan out, hey, how am I going to do this for myself and my family? Now, by the way, let me end with a couple of things. I love investing. So I've done almost all these things. I'm not saying that to brag. It's something that is exciting to me. It fires me up. It's enjoyable to me. So it's almost like a hobby, if you will. But for most people, if you just did one or two, you're going to be super well off. I think the biggest thing that pains me is when people are so conservative. I have a family member like this. So they have a couple $1,000,000. If I ran the math, they would have had about $8 or $10 million because they kept all their money in municipal bonds, making 2 to 4% their whole life. A little bit of stocks, like a little bit, but 80% of their portfolio was muni bonds that made just above inflation rates. Inflation's about 3% a year. So you got to get at least 3% a year on your return in order just for it not to devalue. And so that thing pains me. It's like, no, if you just would have put that money in an S&P fund, you would have 8 or 10 million, not 2 million. I hate to see that. I hate to see it when people are so ultra conservative because they won't just read a few books and educate themselves, that they stifle their own potential, right? Or someone not, let me take a simpler example. Someone just not fully contributing to their 401k. The silliest thing for most people. Only 6% of Americans, according to one study I read, 6% of Americans fully fund their 401k. So silly. I mean, it's just silly. And then the employer matches it on top of that. So maybe you put in 15 grand a year, they put in another 5, you're saving 20 grand a year tax-free. That money is going to grow into multi-millions if you just do it. But people, you can't get them to do it. They're like, I'm going to put in 2%, and it's like, okay, well, you're going to put in, say, $2,000 or $3,000 a year to your 401k, could have been, say, $20,000 a year. And the difference in that delta is millions and millions and millions when you're 60 years old. Millions, not 1 million, millions. And it just pains me. I'm just like, oh my God, what are you doing? Can we just educate ourselves a little bit and be a little bit more aggressive on the 401k? Okay. So if you do nothing from all these 7 things I just talked about, fully fund your 401k and you're going to be fine. Maybe have 1 or 2 rentals. You're going to be more than fine. So you don't have to, this is not rocket science. It is not that complicated and you should do it. So if this resonated, maybe send it to your nephew, send it to your kids, send it to your mom or dad, send it to some people because it's a nice start to, this is a way of thinking about money. This is a framework for thinking about investing. And it gave me some tips. Okay. Hope you enjoy it. Have a beautiful day. Thanks, guys.